Nothing is visibly wrong. Most people wake up in safe homes. They have access to food, electricity, and information at any moment. Medical care is better than it was decades ago. Technology removes friction from tasks that once required real effort. And yet, many people feel tired before the day has even started. Not tired in a dramatic way, not exhausted after something difficult, just consistently low on energy. This is not the kind of tiredness that sleep fixes. A full night of rest helps, but only temporarily. By midday, the heaviness returns. What makes this strange is that on paper, life should feel easier than ever. Previous generations worked longer hours. They had fewer tools, less comfort, more physical strain. Yet exhaustion is now discussed as if it were a personality trait. People say they are tired as casually as they talk about the weather. It has become part of normal conversation. Almost expected. But tiredness was not always normal. Something has changed, not suddenly, and not in one obvious place. There is no single moment where life broke. No clear crisis that explains why energy feels so scarce. Most systems still function. Work continues, cities operate, daily routines remain intact. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If nothing is clearly broken, why does everything feel so heavy? This kind of tiredness does not announce itself loudly. It doesn't arrive after failure or hardship. It settles quietly, spreading across ordinary days. Many people assume it must be personal. Maybe they are doing something wrong. Maybe they are unmotivated. Maybe they just need better habits. But when the same feeling appears across different lives, different jobs, and different countries, personal explanations start to feel insufficient, especially when the tiredness persists even during calm periods, even on days without stress, even when nothing demanding happens. The exhaustion doesn't disappear. It waits. And the more familiar it becomes, the less it is questioned. Not because it makes sense, but because everyone seems to share it. Something is shaping how energy is spent long before we notice it leaving. Energy is not only consumed by physical effort. In modern life, much of it is spent quietly, in the background. Decisions that once happened occasionally now happen constantly. Messages arrive without pause. Tasks overlap instead of ending cleanly. Even when nothing urgent is happening, attention remains partially engaged. The mind rarely returns to a fully neutral state. This creates a form of effort that is difficult to notice because it never peaks. It stays low, continuous, and unresolved. Unlike physical work, it does not signal completion. There is no clear moment where effort ends and recovery begins. Energy is spent maintaining readiness rather than performing action. Over time, this constant low-level demand accumulates, not enough to cause collapse, just enough to prevent renewal. Rest traditionally worked because it created separation. Work ended. Attention disengaged. Recovery followed. That separation has become porous. Time off often includes partial awareness of work, information, or obligation. Even leisure carries traces of monitoring and anticipation. As a result, rest no longer functions as a clean reset. It reduces strain temporarily, but does not fully restore capacity. Energy is replenished just enough to continue, not enough to recover. This creates a cycle where tiredness becomes stable rather than temporary. When a condition persists long enough, it stops being noticed. Exhaustion does not always feel dramatic. Often, it feels normal. People adapt to lower energy without realizing it. Expectations adjust downward. Pacing slows internally while life continues at the same speed. Over time, tiredness becomes part of identity rather than a signal. It is no longer interpreted as a warning, but as a given. Once this happens, the absence of energy stops raising questions. It is tempting to explain persistent tiredness as a personal issue. individual habits, motivation, discipline. But widespread patterns suggest something broader. When similar exhaustion appears across different lifestyles and cultures, individual explanations lose strength. This does not mean personal choices are irrelevant, but it raises the possibility that tiredness is not a deviation. It may be the expected outcome of how modern life is organized. If exhaustion is built into everyday structures, it cannot be solved solely through personal effort. But if it is treated only as a structural condition, individual agency disappears. The tension remains unresolved between personal responsibility and systemic design, between adaptation and resistance. And until that tension is clearly understood, tiredness will continue to feel both familiar and unexplained.